皆様こんにちは。リンク J のライブウェビナーにご参加いただきありがとうございます。本日はリンク J、オクセンティア、オックスフォードユニバーシティイノベーション共同開催プログラム、オックスフォードイブニングシリーズ Vol.4、オックスフォードが世界をリードする起業家支援、社内ベンチャー育成プログラムをお送りいたします。私は本日司会を務めますリンク J の関と申します。よろしくお願いいたします。本日は画面でお示ししているプログラムに沿って進めてまいります。皆様からのご質問はウェビナーの Q&A 機能からお願いいたします。パネルディスカッションの時間にお答えいたします。議論の盛り上がりや質問数に応じ、終了を10分ほど延長する可能性がございますので、よろしくお願いいたします。なお、本イベントではウェビナーの英語字幕をご利用いただけます。本字幕は日本語に対応しておりませんので、日本語でのアナウンスなど字幕が不要な箇所はご自身でオフに設定していただければ幸いです。また、字幕は市販されているアプリを使用しており、リンク J は語訳、訳文の欠落など、字幕に関する一切の責任を負いかねますので、ご了承お願いいたします。また、リンク J 事務局からのお願いですが、終了後にアンケートフォームへのリンクが表示されますので、イベントへのご感想をお寄せいただきますようお願いいたします。今回もネットワーキングの時間を設けており、Zoom のブレイクアウトルームを使用いたします。ネットワーキング会場のウェブサイトはイベントの最後に口頭やチャットにてご案内差し上げますので、セミナー終了後にぜひご参加ください。それでは、リンク J の曽山よりご挨拶いたします。よろしくお願いいたします。
はい、皆様こんばんは。本日はですね、このウェビナーにご参加いただいて誠にありがとうございます。今日はですね、リンク J オックスフォードユニバーシティイノベーション、そしてオクセンティア、3社共同開催プログラムの第4回目になります。テーマはですね、オックスフォードが世界をリードする起業家支援、社内ベンチャー育成プログラムとなっております。いわゆるアントレプレナーに加えてですね、イントレプレナーなんていうふうにも呼ばれますよね。社内起業家の方々の育成プログラムといったようなお話もいっぱい出てくると思います。今回ですね、これ4回シリーズでコロナの影響のもとですね、ウェビナーとしてやっておりまして、その最終回、一応ね、4回の中の最終回となります。この4回ですね、通してですね、オクセンティアのシニアコンサルタントであって、リンク J のサポーターでもある松永さんにですね、モデレーターをやっていただいて、ずっとね、一緒にオーガナイズをさせていただいております。松永さん、本当にありがとうございます。ということでですね、4回目、オックスフォードにおけるさらにまたユニークな取り組みをご紹介していただけると思います。それでは松永さん、よろしくお願いします。
佐山さん、ありがとうございます。皆さん、いつもお世話になります。松永です。よろしくお願いします。オックスフォード、今日は森です。先日、洪水があって、ちょっと来るに大変なことになりました。今日はですね、私の実は友人でもあるティム・ハート、今一緒に仕事してるんですけれども、彼に、社内ベンチャーについてちょっと喋ってもらいます。で、彼はですね、30年ぐらい、こうした起業家のビジネスを行っていて、もうすでに2、3社のスタートアップを経験してるんですね。で、当時彼はもともと僕がこっちでドクター取った時のメンターだったんですね。で、その後、僕は日本の会社に入ったんですけれども、彼はそこでスタートアップを上げて、で、私はそこで日本の会社にいながら彼の技術を、使いながら社内ベンチャーをやったっていう、経験があります。結果的にはちょっとこけたんですけれども、そんな経験を、話してもらえればと思います。Tim, so can you put your camera and the microphone on, please?
Hello.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine. Thank you, Masashi.
Thank you. So I just did a brief introduction of yourself and your entrepreneur, and I did intrapreneur using your technologies 25 years ago. So if you can start your presentation, go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. And thanks again for inviting me back to talk to you guys this time from the other side, or about the other side, focusing more on the corporate sector. I'm going to assume you can all see my slides, so please shout if you can't. The focus of this discussion is about entrepreneurship and innovation leadership skills, academia versus corporates. So what we're going to look at here is try to compare who's the best at innovating, the academic environment or the corporate environment. Who dares wins. This is a motto, for those of you who don't know, from the British Elite Special Services, the SAS or the Special Air Service, of who dares wins. And it's actually very pertinent to what I'm going to talk to you about today. We may come back to this comment because sometimes it may be about who dares the most may innovate the most. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, and I'm going to only briefly talk about this, Oxentia, developed out of the University of... Yes.
We're not sure seeing your screen yet.
You're not seeing my screen. I need to share, right?
Yeah.
Hang on, guys. Right. Do you see it now?
Yep.
Do you see the right view?
Yes, yes. Yeah, you can go. Yes, this is fast one. Go ahead.
All right. Thanks, everybody. All right. So Oxentia developed out of the University of Oxford's Technology Transfer Office. We're an important part of the Oxford ecosystem, but our work is global. If you want to find out more about Oxentia, please visit oxentia.com or communicate directly with Masashi. We do lots of different stuff, and we do it all over the world for the public and the private sector. I will mention one thing, which is very exciting news. We're telling everybody. Oxentia has just launched its own foundation. And the reason I'm telling you this is because this is actually important for what motivates us as a business, is an absolute strong relationship to our purpose. And the purpose of the foundation is in tackling global inequality through innovation and entrepreneurship. Now, why is that important now? And why are we talking to corporates? Well, you know, historically, from an entrepreneur or from a public sector, from a university perspective, we always think that big corporates have it all sorted. That everything's fine, and that's all we aspire to be, that successful innovation is what you see in a big corporate. But that's actually an inequality, because all our focus and support historically has been on entrepreneurs and universities, try and help them become the big corporates. Well, guess what? Big corporates have problems too. And so one of the ways perhaps we're going to address inequality, not necessarily from the foundation's perspective, but is in also trying to support big corporates and the corporate sector with some of the issues they face within innovation. Bit of background from me. I've been around long enough now to have learned a thing or two about early stage technology commercialization and innovation. I lead our entrepreneurship and accelerator activities, and I have myself spun out a couple of companies focused in the life sciences. So I've got experience from all sides of the ecosystem, should we say. So can we learn anything? Can corporates learn anything from the other side? The other side being academia. And they're a funny comparison. It's a funny comparison because we're always trying to get better relationships between academia and industry. It's an eternal challenge. Wherever we go in the world, we're often asked, how can we develop better relationships between academia and industry or the corporate world? And both are primary sources of innovation in our world. Universities innovate and corporates innovate, but they're not primary outputs. Innovation is not a primary output. Universities are there to do research and teaching, and companies are there to make money. But in doing these things in both these organizations, innovation happens. And a lot of businesses put a lot of effort and resource, and increasingly so over the years, in trying to innovate more and better. So the experiment here, my thesis here, is can we learn anything from the other side? Can corporates learn anything about how to innovate more effectively by looking at how innovation happens within academic environments? So bear with me. Let's see what we can learn. And what's entrepreneurship got to do with all this? Well, to define it, entrepreneurship is the act of behaving like an entrepreneur, but within a larger organization. Kind of contradiction in terms, isn't it? I've never worked in an organization larger than what I'm currently in. This scares me. There's 25 people in this organization. This is a big organization, but it allows me at the moment to sometimes exercise my entrepreneurial tendencies. But large corporates that becomes more difficult. So if there's value in it, how do we deliver it and how do we enable it to happen within the confines of much larger organizational structures and priorities and motivation? So a question that I think is quite pertinent is this: can you be innovative without being entrepreneurial? And I think the answer may be, we may see this quite a lot in traditional Japanese corporates as an example, is that yes, you can. You can be a researcher within a corporate setting. You can develop innovations and new ideas, new products, without necessarily being entrepreneurial. But if entrepreneurship is important for corporates, that ability to motivate and drive new ideas out of individuals within a corporation, can you be entrepreneurial without being innovative? And I don't think you can. I think if you're going to be entrepreneurial, innovation will be there. So they are intrinsically linked and important. When I talk about innovation leadership skills, I'm also talking about entrepreneurship skills. The reason I want to talk very, very briefly and try to give you some insights about the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is because I think we've learned something from this story about perhaps how we could innovate more effectively everywhere, but also in corporate. You know, it's only just over 5 weeks ago that this vaccine was approved for use by the UK regulator. And we've now vaccinated over 10 million people in this country. And this was the great story on the 4th of January. A retired maintenance manager, Brian Pinker, he's 82, and he was vaccinated at 7:30 a.m. by Sam Foster, the nurse at the Oxford Churchill Hospital, and Brian became very famous overnight. And of course, I'm not going to go into detail about this, but just a little bit about the science. The key issue here is that the research came out of a research program within the University of Oxford that was already underway and focused on disease X. There was already a program in place ready for something to happen like what happened with COVID-19. And it was just over a year ago that we all know the Chinese scientists released the sequence for COVID-19. And very quickly, within a couple of weeks, the Oxford group had started developing development work and being able to express the spike protein within their platform technology. And as we know, phase 1, phase 2 trials began only in April. The lady that you see down here is Elisa Granato. Elisa's a molecular microbiologist at Oxford, and she was one of the first 2 people in the world to be vaccinated, to be tested and injected with this vaccine, and then observed for the effects in that very first clinical trial. The interesting story is that days later, there was news all over the social media of her death from complications. And Elisa says that there's nothing like waking up to a fake article on your death. I'm doing fine, everyone, and kept communicating this issue. But it goes to show us some of the difficulties that are faced in developing and delivering what has been a monumental task. So that's just a little bit about the science and a bit of background there. A little bit about the people. Does anybody recognize anybody in that picture? Well, I'll tell you. The lady on the top left is Professor Sarah Gilbert, and she's the PI on the vaccine program. On the right, we have Louise Richardson, who is Vice Chancellor of the university. Bottom left, we have Andrew Pollard, who's been leading the clinical trials for the university. And the bottom right, of course, is Prince William, the Duke of Cambridge. And there's been many calls that Prince William has been having with lots of different people in support of the pandemic. And this was an example where he was fascinated to hear about what had been going on with this great development. Say a little bit about the money, because this is when it gets very interesting. Because as you probably all know, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine is considerably cheaper in cost than the other vaccines which are currently available. And I know that there are certainly more that have been authorized for use in the UK than is on this recent table. And this is where it gets really interesting, because there was conversations going on between Sir John Bell, who was representing the university in developing this vaccine, and also the CEO of AstraZeneca, Pascal Soriot. Back in April, John was looking for a drugs company to take care of the manufacturing and distribution, but there was two conditions the university had for a partner to work with to take this to market. And as you may know, this was around equitable access to the vaccine around the world to help poorer countries, and that the company, the partner, would have to operate on a non-profit basis whilst the World Health Organization designated the crisis still a pandemic. And Pascal was asked how he managed to strike this deal with Oxford to supply 1 billion vaccine doses at cost. And his response was, "My kids would kill me if I didn't do this." Great purpose behind the innovation. The other interesting story here, you can see Oxford had the brains while Cambridge supplied the brawn. There is association of AstraZeneca with Cambridge, and so there's always a very healthy interaction as the headlines report between Oxford and Cambridge with this story. Talk a little bit about the role of agile regulators. As you know, the UK left the European Union on 31st of December, and the next day, the UK regulator, the MHRA, introduced this accelerated assessment procedure for drugs, which has enabled this country to adapt its systems and optimize the systems which facilitate much more rapid authorization and marketing authorization for new drugs. And that's what happened. And so there has been innovation within the regulatory environment in the UK, which has facilitated the rapid authorization and rollout of this innovation and vaccines from Oxford. And so even the regulators, even government bodies have innovated here to enable this. When we stand back and think, well, what have we learned about how to innovate from this experience? Well, yes, this is a very exceptional circumstance, so we have to be careful what we take away. But one of the points is, does purpose, this great purpose that was reflected, the responsible innovation aspect of this, which is unique for the Oxford vaccine compared to the competition, does this purpose unlock more of a can-do attitude? And innovation happens more than perhaps would get caught up in some bureaucracy of regulatory approval and manufacture and partnering deals. with different stakeholders and corporates. Does more autonomy through an accelerated regulatory process and the agility and the innovation that's happened within the regulatory framework in the UK, does that more autonomy enable us to deliver innovation much more rapidly to market? So autonomy and purpose, there could be some lessons that we learn from this experience. And this is the point, that innovation, as Steve Jobs says, has nothing to do with how many R&D dollars you have. When Apple came up with the Mac, IBM was spending about 100 times more on R&D. It's not about the money. It's about the people you have, it's about how you're led, and it's about how much you get it. So the focus here is about what we call the human element. In our ability to innovate much more effectively within corporate environments, what role and what can we do on the human side, and the people that we have, which quite frankly represent the unlimited potential and ability for us to innovate. How do we better utilize these individuals, and what can we learn from academic environments that will allow us to better utilize the human element within corporate settings? More entrepreneurship activity. Some of you may have come across Dan Pink's work on Motivation 3.0, the importance of autonomy, which we've seen with the Oxford vaccine, the importance of mastery, this ability to keep getting better and keep becoming experts in our own particular activities, and how important purpose is to drive and motivate us to innovate. And academic environments have this easily. Do we have enough of this in corporate settings? How do we deliver more purpose amongst our people? How do we move people away from just thinking they need to focus just on the bottom line? And if we're not making profit and we're not building shareholder value, then we're not innovating. And moving people perhaps away from that. Because if you want to motivate highly educated people, particularly young people, then as Dan Pink says, you pay them enough to take the issue of money off the table, and then other issues become important to how you motivate them. So if you want to motivate people within corporate settings, you don't do it by just money. And Dan Pink has shown, and many studies have shown in the past, that actually the more you pay them beyond a certain amount, the worse they perform in innovation. And if you look at Dan's work, then you'll understand more around that. Autonomy and giving people the opportunity to drive their own ideas is incredibly important, and we do it quite easily within academic settings. It's the nature of the setting. And so, as an academic, I can run my own show. And if I fail, perhaps in some respects, there's less of an impact on a loss of social capital than if I fail within a corporate setting, where I'm much more carefully managed. I actually have a lot less autonomy. And I have less opportunity to innovate. Because if I fail in that environment, this may affect how I integrate, how I perform, and importantly, how I'm viewed by others. In order for us to innovate more effectively within corporate settings, maybe we need to permit more autonomy within our businesses, with our people. One of the other issues we face is that in corporate settings, innovation often gets passed on from the ideator. These settings where process dominates in order to deliver the efficiencies that we see, we find that the people who have the ideas in corporate settings will not be the individuals that take those all the way through to market. Yet, these are the individuals, particularly for radical innovation, transformative innovation, who have the vision and tenacity to see it through. So what happens is many people just don't bother. Why should I innovate? There's so many layers of hierarchy and bureaucracy within the organization. Does anybody really care about what I think? And anyway, even if I do have a brilliant idea, am I going to have the opportunity to see it through, or is it just going to get passed on to other departments? And in academia, this happens far more easily. The ideators, the academic founders, have much more autonomy and opportunity to take it through to market. And that motivates people. Right, I'm going to talk about generational values, because our organizations, our corporate organizations, will become inevitably full of younger and younger people as we develop, because that's how life goes. And as people change and the next generation come, then the values of those individuals differ. And if we don't understand if and how they differ, how are we going to motivate them and make the most of our workforce and the human element within our corporate setting? Now, 30 years ago, everybody wanted to work in a big corporate. As a graduate, all I want to do is want to go and work in a big corporate and have a great career and a secure career. But things have changed. And the younger generation have less focus on big corporates and more of an interest in startups and more of an interest in ensuring that there is purpose within their work, within their careers, and the line facilitated by technology between work and life has blurred. And more life is incorporated into work, and work is incorporated into life, again facilitated by technology. And this is important because if we're going to motivate our young innovators of tomorrow within our corporate environments, then we need to understand how we motivate and engage them if their values have changed and are different. I talk about the millennials, okay? This is Generation Y, and these individuals are loyalty light. They move around, they're really mobile. And one of the most interesting aspects of the younger generation is that they expect very rapid career progression. This is a problem because it creates an issue. It comes from the world that they live in, the digital world, where they get rapid gratification of whatever they're looking for, from shopping to consumer, all the way through to relationships. But what happens is that in their careers, there becomes a challenge in developing long, trusting, effective personal and professional relationships. And this is fundamental to entrepreneurship. Trust becomes eroded because the young generation don't give enough time in their relationships to develop those trusts. Patience is required for mastery, incredibly important component of how we engage people to innovate within corporate settings. We need to be careful because it's not all good for the young generation. And they've lost the value, perhaps, of gaining experience and giving themselves patience within their careers because they expect such rapid career progression and impact. I'm going to move on because there's a new generation coming, as we're all aware, Generation Z, totally integrated into the digital world, further blurring of work-life boundaries. They have to be engaged and they have to take more and more meaning and purpose from their work. The buzzwords for the new generation: sustainability, social purpose, inclusion, equality. And so if we want to engage and motivate the new generation to innovate and work effectively within our organizations, we must address these issues. We all know curiosity and imagination drives innovation. But the problem that we have is that in corporate settings, this becomes more and more guarded. And this truly open capacity to be creative and curious gets stifled as we grow in our careers. Ignore that, that's a fire alarm. And our thinking and our imagination gets guarded. In our corporate settings, we are more careful and cautious about having new ideas. And conformity and a lack of challenge ain't going to put a ding in the universe within our corporate settings. And we need to understand and create cultures within our people in organizations that we're never going to have truly original ideas if we're not prepared to be wrong. So we need to support this and encourage from the top of our organization this ability to think and be free and not be afraid to be wrong. Or we're not going to be able to effectively innovate as much with the human element of our organizations as we so wish. But there's a problem. Because as Irina would say, who's a great thinker from either New Zealand or Australia, I can't remember, in entrepreneurship, busyness is the opium of the people. And within our corporate settings, we don't get time to be curious, and we need to change that. Because people are all so busy that we're effectively doomed and wasting intellectual capital within our organizations unless we ensure we provide that opportunity for people to be curious and not so busy. What you're doing is you're wasting the infinite, unlimited resource you have in the human ability to innovate. You can put as many processes as you like in place, but unless we support and nurture the ability of our human talent and our intellectual capital to deliver value in our organizations, then we are limited in our ability. Curiosity, one of the other challenges is that curiosity requires patience. We have this is easier within academic settings, but you got to be patient in order for the ugly duckling to change into the beautiful swan. And sometimes in corporate settings, we don't give enough time for that innovation to incubate and iterate and develop and be realized into the true value it is. And so perhaps we lose too many ideas because we don't give them enough time in corporate settings. We all know agility is important, and it's an incredibly difficult balance. The little small spin-outs that we form from academic settings are incredibly agile, and it's that agility which often is the secret to their success. But how do we balance the fact that we have larger organizations that are limited in their ability to be agile because they're so big and process dominant? I'm going to move more towards the end of this. We'll make sure that you receive a copy of these slides. I'm going to say one thing about the importance of diversity within corporate settings. And this was a study that was done looking at over 17,000 patents. And what it looked at was the value of innovation in relation to the diversity of the teams that were working on it. The point here is the more diverse our teams are in corporate settings, we need to make sure that we are working across disciplines and across departments. But the more diverse the teams are, the higher the value of innovations. Now, let me tell you what I mean by that. If we have aligned teams that are very similar, actually the average value of the innovation is higher than if we have teams of people from very diverse backgrounds. In fact, if we have teams from more diverse backgrounds, the average value of the innovation is lower and we get more failures, but we also get more breakthrough, radical, transformative innovations, and that's where the value is. Often we find in corporates, the faster, the better, the cheaper, the iterative innovation, the continuous improvement is easy. But the transformative, radical innovation, the types of innovation that we're seeing in academic settings is much harder to achieve. One way we do this is through more diverse team working. And I realize I'm running out of time, so I am going to finish on this slide. And this just highlights the 3 reasons, the triple impact why entrepreneurship is important within corporate settings. And there's a comparison here between corporate and academia because they both deliver the same thing. 1, they deliver innovation. In corporate settings, that increases shareholder value. 2, we improve employee skills. By engaging our staff and encouraging more ideas and developing environments and programs that enable our human element of our organizations to be innovative, we employ their skill set. We improve their skill sets. This improves productivity. And finally, engagement. The more we enable our staff, our people to have purpose, to have autonomy, then the more value they will deliver in the business. And hopefully we've seen how perhaps we need to think sometimes, rethink how we engage, particularly the younger generation where values are different. I'm going to finish there because I'm sensitive to time. And I'm happy to take some questions from now. Masashi, thank you.
Thank you, Tim, for the sponsoring. Thanks, Tim, as well. Thank you very much. Okay, it's great talk, and we want to have a couple of discussions. But in the interest of like our organization, and this is like a final session, I want to I prepared a couple of questions to the audiences, if you don't mind. So LinkJ team, if you don't mind, can you put the first questions on the screen, please? So I have 3 questions to the audiences. So we hold 4 events called the Oxford Evening. One is for ecosystem and open innovation, IP session, and this time entrepreneurs. How many times did you attend? Can you answer? Click. Can wait for 10 seconds. It's easy answer. And the LinkJ team, if we go 80% answer, maybe you can share the results, please. Good, thank you. It's good to put trend. Many people are for the first times, and thank you very much. 11% of people attended all sessions. For the advertisement, all the archive is available from LinkJ website or YouTube. Can you go to the next question, please? So the next question is yourself. So I think for the entrepreneurship, so next one, please. So I think there's many corporate people are joining from corporate sectors and as well as the entrepreneurs. So can you pick up your sector if you are R&D in a corporate, open innovation doing in corporate, BD in corporate, or other sectors in corporate, or you're doing startups, or you are academia, or you are government or local government, or you are in a research institute, or anything else. We don't search your privacy, just for our information. Okay, maybe we can wait for 10 seconds, then we can close and share the result, please. Good. Okay, it's quite diverse. I want to have like a new team in here. Okay, thank you very much. So the majority, first 3 points are from 4 points are from corporate. So I think half of the people are joining from corporate, so which is very good sign for today's session. Thank you. If you could go to the next question, please. Okay, so it's maybe question to the corporate people, because I imagine the half of people are joining from corporate. So question is, if you are already doing entrepreneurship programs, or second one is if you're doing entrepreneurship program, but it's not very successful. Number three is you planning, but it's not starting yet. And the number four, final one is it's today's team session is a new idea to your company. Can you pick up? And share the result, please. Good, good. It's very interesting trend. Thank you very much for answering to the questions. Okay, so many corporates are not even starting the entrepreneur. So this is quite a nice trend. So if I could go to panel session, how can I control? Not, this is Teams sessions, sorry. Tim, are you seeing my slide?
Yes, I can, but you need to change the view. It's on, go to display settings, I think.
Yeah, sorry.
At the top. You just needed to change it from presenter to, that's better. Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, thank you. So maybe if Soyama-san can also join. So we're going to have a short session with Tim and Soyama-san, CEO, Link-J, and myself as usual. So from your presentation, there's I think there's three key points. One is speed for the vaccination program. Second one is you haven't touched, but more like a failure, the balance. And the third one is culture. And the next slide is I pick up from your slides from the other presentations. But if you do the kind of innovative stuff, there's failure is coming. So this is an example of the Tesla. Tesla used to be like a small company, so they could fail. But if the same things happen in a large corporate, like a Toyota, Nissan, it's a big problem. And I believe the corporate, especially for Japanese corporate, are designed not to make mistake. Any process is systemized. So how do you think of like a balance between having failure and keeping not failure as organized? Tim.
There's a famous saying that that I was told that somebody's boss kept telling them, and that is, if you're not failing, you're not trying, and if you're not trying, you're not innovating. So there is this cultural change, and it is a cultural change. Everything boils down to culture, I believe. You know, culture is like our glass ceiling of our ability to innovate. You can do anything you want in a corporate, you can throw more money at it, you can put more processes in place. But unless you address the cultural issues, of which how we work and how we manage and how we accept failure is one of them, then you limit your ability. And so you have to address cultural change, and that's how you address issues such as failure.
Good, thank you. So you talked about corporate, but if you are like an individual in a big corporate, like I'm like a researcher, and I want to be innovative, but there's a culture may block to you to be too innovative. How do you react? Do you have to wait for the company decision, or you can tell, or you can do spin out, or you can leave the company?
One of the most effective ways that we change culture within corporate settings is through role modeling. So it has to come from the top of the organization. So the leaders and the managers have to start demonstrating and behaving in a way that enables others to feel safe. It all comes down to trust again, in order to change the culture and acceptability of failure. So to start setting up programs whereby failure is supported if it happens, and it becomes much more acceptable, and leaders talk about their own failings, and we start bringing it into conversations, and we do that by reflecting it in our own behaviors, and that's how we start dealing with it. It takes time, but if it doesn't start from the top, if the leaders of the organization don't practice these behaviors, nothing will happen.
Good. Maybe Soyama-san can have a comment, because he knows he was a boss in a big corporate and now supporting many entrepreneurs. So Soyama-san, any comment, please?
Yeah. Actually, I believe that innovator within a corporate is quite important. Without innovators, nothing will happen. But with only innovators, nothing will become successful. So as Tim-san says, leadership is quite important. The top management leadership is quite important, and make a success case is quite important. But this is I think first phase of the innovation, or to promote innovation. But after that, the corporate itself should change their processes, or how do I say, regulations, or some formula, like 70%, 20%, 10% rule or something, right, in Amazon or Google or whatever. This is a second phase. But the most important but difficult and takes a long time taking point is to change culture and incorporate that culture for a long time. I think this kind of three-phased approach is very important. But as for the Japanese corporations, because as a culture of Japanese, we tend to seek the perfectionism. In that sense, as Masashi-san said, no mistakes, no failure is quite important in that sense. So that is the big hurdle for Japanese corporation, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's developing initiatives, processes, programs that enable some of these behaviors to start being demonstrated that are acceptable to the existing culture of the organization. So it's finding ways, and they're different for each corporate, but it's finding ways in which we do this. Now one way you do it is you practice more open innovation. You give it to somebody else. You bring in external opportunities into your organization. The problem with that is, in my opinion, it's not sustainable. Because what happens is that corporate then becomes dependent. You look at the pharma sector, it's increasingly dependent on innovations from the outside. Right. Its prime function is mass development and manufacture, which is really, really good at. So my issue here is how we are wasting so much talent, and we're not retaining talent within our corporate organizations because we're not enabling them to the individuals across the organization, not just the privileged few who are supposed to be innovating, but everybody in the organization. So that's my issue here. We need to make sure that we are supporting the talent within our corporations to enable them to innovate, because that's our own asset that perhaps we're not utilizing enough.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that human talent is the most important asset because talent has a big upside potential as well as big downside potential, but it's much bigger than other important resources like money or infrastructure or something like that. Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, but Tim, I have a question. So, what kind of person I'm sorry. What kind of skill or character or is more appropriate for the entrepreneurship, and which one is more appropriate to the entrepreneur outside?
Yeah, there's a focus on soft skills. We need to make sure that we are producing graduates out of our universities that are not just specialists in knowledge, but are able to have what we call these life skills. These skills in adaptability, in resiliency, and sometimes we call them these T-shaped individuals. You know, this is apparently one of the secrets of success of ecosystems such as Stanford and Silicon Valley, in that there is a big focus on, by T-shaped, we mean individuals that have very specialist knowledge in a certain area, that have the ability to collaborate across disciplines. And having those skills and ability to, and continuous learning is another one of those secret critical life skills we think for the future. These are the types of individuals that we need to produce. These are the skills that we need to develop within people, within corporate settings. And it's hugely empowering for them, for the organizations. We are missing the potential of these individuals.
Great. Thank you very much. I have many questions, and maybe audiences has got question in your mind, but maybe we can use other networking session with considering this time is money. So I am now sending everybody the link of the next Zoom session. So it's more like casual. So it's not webinar. It's like a networking session. So everyone is invited to this session to talk to me, Soyama-san, team, and another organizer for this event, OUI people will also join. So maybe we can meet in 10 minutes time. And Soyama-san, maybe if you have like a closing comment for this event.
Okay, I'll talk in Japanese. Sorry, Tim-san, but
no, it's okay.
皆さんいかがですか？いかがでしたか？今松永さんおっしゃったように、この後ね、Zoom のブレイクアウトで、引き続きですね、登壇者の皆様、あとは OUI のオクセンティアの人、ともね、コミュニケーションできるんで、ぜひこのままご参加いただければと思います。冒頭申し上げたようにですね、この4回シリーズ、というのはこれで終わりなんですが、実は今ね、松永さんと相談をしていて、非常にこう、有益でね、インサイトフル、なセッションだったんで、今後もなんかやれないかというお話をしてまして、今ですね、お話しているのは、オックスフォード大学はもちろんなんですが、オックスフォード大学をはじめとして英国のね、アカデミア発のスタートアップの方々に今後ですね、またご登壇をいただいて、生の声を聞きながらですね、議論するというウェビナーの開催をですね、ちょっと相談しているところです。どのぐらいの頻度でどうやるかっていうのはこれから次第だと思うんですけれども、そういったこともですね、やっていこうと思ってますので、ぜひ楽しみにしていてください。よろしくお願いします。松永さん、こんな感じでいいですか？
はい、ありがとうございます。いろいろとまたこちらから企画というか発信ができればと思います。
ぜひぜひお願いします。
お願いします。じゃあ、事務局の方にお返しします。関さん。
皆様いかがでしたでしょうか？このオックスフォードイブニングシリーズは今回が最後となりますが、今後気になりたいテーマや登壇者についてご意見ご要望がございましたら QR コード もしくはウェビナー終了後に表示されるリンクよりアンケートフォームにお進みいただき、皆様のご意見、ご感想をお聞かせください。皆様のお役に立つウェビナーを開催したくご協力をお願いいたします。また、リンク J のイベントお知らせメールを受け取りたい方は、表示されております QR コードからご登録いただけますと幸いです。この後、講師と参加者との交流の場ということで、ネットワーキングの場を設けております。本ページとチャット欄に掲載しております Zoom URL に会場を移動し、ネットワーキングの時間を設けたいと思います。ぜひ皆様ご参加ください。それでは本日はご視聴いただきましてありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
はい。